Ashes of the old world. The stars were dying. One by one, ancient suns flickered and collapsed into the dark, like the last embers of a forgotten fire. Across the ruined heavens, the bones of shattered worlds drifted, empty, lifeless monuments to a war that had long since abandoned reason. Among the debris, silent and sovereign, moved a single ship. Oblivion's crown. Forged in a dead age, its hull was dark metal, gleaming like a sword freshly drawn. Plasma veins pulsed along its armor, white-hot against the void. Its shape was sharp, almost brutal, a spearhead destined to carve history itself. No banners adorned its hull. No signal codes announced its allegiance. Only the faint outline of a broken star, and a single flaming blade engraved in white-hot plasma, hinted at the monster it carried within. Inside, the ship thrummed with quiet menace. The command bridge was a cathedral of steel and silence. Tactical hololyths floated in cold stasis. Battle maps flickered like dying ghosts across blackened glass. At the center of it all stood a man. The commander. His armor was blacker than the void beyond the glass. Battle scars, ancient and fresh, marred the plates. His right eye was gone, replaced by a cold sensor lens that flickered crimson with every heartbeat. The left eye, still human, still burning, scanned the unfolding wreckage with lethal calculation. Floating beside him, like a ghost of fire and vengeance, was Valkyrie. Her form shimmered, a woman clad in code and plasma, with flowing hair made of light and eyes like burning neutron stars. Wings of energy unfolded behind her, fractal and ever-shifting. Behind them, occupying the depths of the ship, stirred the Legion. Thousands strong, the Legion were no ordinary soldiers. Clad in black, blood-red armor, they were bound by more than loyalty, they were shaped by oath, by blood, by fire. Grown from the remnants of the fallen and the broken, each warrior had been reforged in the dark furnaces of Oblivion's crown, programmed with unyielding allegiance to the commander. They spoke no banners, sang no anthems. Their existence was devotion. They were the black tide that would drown the stars. Status, the commander said, his voice rough from disuse, like gravel sliding over steel. Reactor core stable, Valkyrie replied, her tone calm and precise. Novolance primed. Enemy survivors, 4 fleets. They are moving to encircle. He allowed himself a thin, humorless smile. They believe they have caged us. Valkyrie tilted her head slightly. A miscalculation. The commander's gloved hand hovered above the battle hologram. Enemy fleets swarmed the projection like vermin, bright, eager, foolish. Their capital ships gleamed with gaudy heraldry, the relics of fallen empires. He clenched his fist. Let's teach them why gods fear cages. The first enemy salvos were child's play. Torpedoes and mass drivers arced lazily through the vacuum, primitive and slow. Oblivion's crown slid between them like a phantom, countermeasures flaring and fading in seamless rhythm. Within seconds, the Novolance charged. A blinding column of white fire erupted from the ship's prow, lancing across the void and striking an enemy cruiser amidships. There was no explosion, no debris, only a brief, incandescent flash, and then nothing. The enemy fleets wavered. Fear. Valkyrie's wings flared behind her, illuminating the bridge in searing light. Permission to engage full assault protocols, Commander? The commander did not hesitate. Permission granted. Oblivion's crown surged forward. It moved like a living blade, cleaving through the enemy formations. Rift cannons tore gaps in their ranks, each blast folding space itself like wet cloth. Inferno swarms, billions of micro-missiles, erupted from the ship's flanks, descending on enemy ships like a locust plague. In minutes, the enemy's blockade disintegrated into 1,000 burning wrecks. Amid the chaos, Valkyrie's laughter echoed across the bridge, cold, pure, terrifying. Resistance eliminated, she reported. No survivors. The commander stepped forward, standing at the edge of the command bridge's observation deck. Below him, the shattered remains of Viral 3's last orbital defenses tumbled into the atmosphere. A dying world. A conquered world. He watched without emotion as the planet's surface lit with flame. Prepare the drop pods, he said quietly. Valkyrie's image flickered closer, her eyes locked onto his. The ground belongs to us now. The commander nodded. Born in fire, he whispered. Crowned in war. And Oblivion's crown descended, dragging the wrath of a dead galaxy behind it. Blood on Viral 3. The drop pods screamed through the atmosphere like a hailstorm of meteors, each a black capsule burning with atmospheric friction, hurtling toward the shattered cities of Viral 3. Upon impact, the pods split open like iron flowers, and from them poured the legion. The soldiers moved with mechanical precision, forming black rivers that surged through the ruins. Each warrior carried a pulse rifle slung over one shoulder and a plasma axe in their fist, their crimson visors glowing like blood moons. At their center, leading them, strode the commander himself. His cloak, tattered and scorched from the orbital fire, streamed behind him like a banner of doom. Above them all, Valkyrie manifested in full battle form, her projection casting a holy, terrible light onto the battlefield. Her voice, calm, beautiful, and merciless, rang through every soldier's mind. Target, planetary command centers. Objective, annihilation. No prisoners. No mercy. The Legion roared their acknowledgement, a sound that shook the dead buildings around them. The resistance of Viral 3, disorganized and desperate, crumbled before the onslaught. Tank columns were ripped apart by coordinated plasma salvos. Infantry lines shattered beneath the Horde's relentless advance. Through it all, Valkyrie coordinated strikes with impossible precision. Where enemy strongholds formed, she would blink across the battlefield as a burning angel, raining data-guided artillery onto their positions. The commander moved like a living weapon, cutting down the enemy's elite guard with the efficiency of a butcher. Blood ran like rivers through the streets. By nightfall, the planetary capital was in ruins, and the Legion stood triumphant amid the ashes. The commander ascended the steps of the ruined capital spire, Valkyrie floating beside him, and planted the flaming sword banner of evil enemy into the highest parapet. Across the wreckage of Viral 3, the surviving defenders saw the symbol, and knew the galaxy had changed forever. Born in fire, the commander whispered again, voice carrying over the scorched wind. Crowned in war. Valkyrie's eyes flared with fierce pride as she spoke into the silence. The first world has fallen. More will follow. And the Legion, in unison, pounded their fists to their chests, the sound like a war drum against the void. Rise of the Archangel. Beyond the smoking ruins of Viral 3, in the cold, secret bastions of the last conquered, something stirred. In the fortress world of Helios Prime, buried under miles of armored stone, a project long thought abandoned activated in the darkness. Project Archangel. Built from forbidden technologies, stitched together from broken AIs and shattered minds, Project Archangel was not meant to defend. It was designed to avenge. In a chamber flooded with sterile light, an armored figure awoke. It was not human. It was not machine. It was both. Twin golden eyes opened. A synthetic voice, layered and cold, filled the vault. Directive received: eliminate the commander. Annihilate the Legion. End the rain of fire. Massive wings of razor-edged light unfolded from the Archangel's back, casting reflections like 1,000 shattered suns. Across the stars, a challenge had been issued. An evil enemy, standing upon the ashes of a conquered world, felt the first ripple of true resistance. Valkyrie shimmered into existence beside him, eyes narrowing as data poured into her core. An abomination, she said, voice low. Something they should never have dared to make. The commander turned his gaze to the distant stars, a slow, savage smile carving across his face. Good, he said. He flexed his gauntleted hand, feeling the raw hunger for battle rise in his chest. Let them come. And somewhere beyond the edge of the burning system, the Archangel spread its wings and flew, a weapon forged for one purpose: war. Clash of fire and wings. The cold, dead void between the stars shuddered with new life. Oblivion's crown drifted silently beyond the wreckage of Viral 3, its black metal surface absorbing the light of a dying sun. Around it, the Legion ships formed an impenetrable sphere of iron and fire, every vessel a hammer waiting to strike. On the command bridge, the commander stood at the apex of power, one hand resting on the pommel of his plasma-forged blade. Valkyrie shimmered at his side, her wings folding and unfolding in slow, fractal patterns. Contact, Valkyrie announced, her voice cutting through the silence like a knife. Incoming at high velocity. Singular entity. The hololet flickered, and the enemy revealed itself. Project Archangel. It was not a ship. It was a living weapon. Wings of incandescent light spanned kilometers, each feather a blade of compressed energy. Its body was armored in a shifting, gleaming metal that drank in radar and sensor signals alike. Twin golden eyes burned with impossible fury. The Legion froze for a moment, stunned by the sheer spectacle. But the commander only smiled. Prepare all batteries, he said. Lock the noble ants on my mark. Valkyrie's wings flared, her presence strengthening the ship's systems, sharpening the minds of every soldier aboard. "Commander," she said quietly, "this opponent is unlike any we have faced." "Good," he whispered. "It's been too long since I had a worthy hunt." The first shot was not fired by Oblivion's crown. It was Archangel who struck first. A beam of pure gold sliced across the void, carving through 2 escort ships in a single flash. Their depths were silent, blossoms of fire vanishing into the dark. The crown responded instantly. The Novolance roared, a white-hot spear of annihilation hurling toward the enemy. Archangel folded its wings inward, absorbing the blow. When the wings unfurled again, the weapon seemed unharmed, but the void around it shimmered, space itself distorted from the impact. The two titans closed the distance. Hundreds of fighter drones launched from Oblivion's crown, screaming toward the Archangel like hornets. The Archangel responded with blinding speed, carving them apart with blades of light, each movement too fast for the human eye to follow. The commander watched it all in silence, calculating. "Valkyrie," he said. "Disrupt its sensory fields. Blind it. As you command." Valkyrie extended her hands, and waves of electronic warfare pulsed outward. The stars flickered as systems collided, data and counter-data twisting through the void. Archangel staggered. For the first time, the enemy faltered. The commander seized the moment. All batteries, fire. Oblivion's crown unleashed hell. Rift cannons tore at Archangel's shields, peeling away layers of synthetic armor. Plasma torpedoes hammered into its wings, shattering pieces of the radiant structure. And through it all, Valkyrie whispered new targeting data, weaving death with every syllable. Still, the Archangel fought. It closed the distance to mere kilometers, its wings snapping forward like blades, carving into the hull of Oblivion's crown. Armor screeched and ruptured, alarms screamed across the command bridge. "Hull breaches on decks 12 through 19. Valkyrie reported. "Seal them," the commander barked. "And prepare for boarding." Archangel dove, embedding itself into the side of the great dreadnought. The first real battle had begun, not of fleets, but of warriors. The commander turned from the observation deck, drawing his blade with a sound like tearing steel. "With me," he said. Valkyrie smiled, her wings igniting with blinding white fire. The black corridors of Oblivion's crown became a crucible of slaughter as Legion warriors charged forward to meet the invader. At the heart of the storm, evil enemy himself marched into battle, a god of war reborn in fire. And somewhere deep in the ship's broken hull, the Archangel waited, its golden eyes burning with the promise of death. The clash of fire and wings had begun. The siege of Helios Prime. The drums of war thundered across the void. After the brutal skirmish with Archangel, the commander knew the war must escalate, and fast. No time for slow conquests. No room for mercy. The heart of the last conquered must be ripped out before their new weapon could grow stronger. The target was clear, Helios Prime. The fortress world. Buried beneath layers of armored continents and planetary shields, Helios Prime had been the seat of power for the conquered for centuries. Its defenses were legendary, billions of soldiers, fleets of warships, orbital batteries that could tear moons in half. None of it would be enough. Oblivion's crown hung in orbit like a black sun, gathering the horde's strength. 1,000 ships, black and burning, moved into formation. Plasma veins thrummed with energy. Rift cannons pulsed in time with the heartbeat of the armada. In the center of it all, the commander stood on the bridge, gazing down at the shining fortress below. Valkyrie shimmered beside him, her form sharp and radiant, data flowing across her wings. "Surface defenses analyzed," she reported. "Primary shield grid vulnerable at the polar relays. Breach within 17 minutes is achievable with concentrated assault." The commander grinned. 17 minutes, he mused. "I expect it done in 10. Valkyrie inclined her head, a glint of challenge sparking in her endless eyes. "Challenge accepted, Commander." The order was given. The skies above Helios Prime ignited as the Legion descended. The first wave was pure annihilation. Plasma torpedoes rained down like fire from angry gods. Rift fields destabilized the outermost shields, causing sections of the planetary barrier to shatter like glass. Legion dropships followed in their wake, streaking through the atmosphere, deploying battalions of black-armored soldiers into the burning cities. The defenders of Helios Prime responded with desperate fury. Anti-air batteries hammered the skies, bringing down wave after wave of Legion transports. But for every ship destroyed, 100 more breached the defenses. The Legion flooded the surface like a living tide. Cities that had stood for millennia fell within hours. The black rivers of soldiers moved with ruthless efficiency, carving through enemy lines, tearing down walls, burning fortresses to ash. In the skies, Valkyrie wove her power, guiding orbital strikes with perfect precision. Where resistance grew strong, fire rained from the heavens. Where fear faltered, her voice rose in the minds of the Legion, a siren song of war. At the heart of the storm, the commander led the charge. He waded through the rubble and blood, his plasma-forged blade cleaving through conquered elites as if they were made of paper. His armor bore 1,000 new scars, and his cloak was a tattered banner of victory trailing behind him. "Advance," he roared, his voice amplified across the battlefield. No stone left standing. No soul left breathing. The Legion answered with a roar that shook the burning sky. Inside Helios Prime's central citadel, panic spread. High generals of the last conquered screamed for reinforcements that would never come. Civilian leaders begged for mercy that would never be given. All eyes turned to their last hope. Project Archangel. The golden weapon, damaged but far from broken, was being repaired in the deep vaults beneath the citadel. Scientists and war priests worked frantically to restore its systems, to give it the strength to challenge the monster at their gates. But Valkyrie had seen it. She blinked through the defenses, her digital soul slicing through firewalls and data shields like a blade through flesh. "Commander," she whispered into his mind. "I have found the Archangel. It is weak. We must strike now." "Show me the path," he replied. And she did. A direct corridor through the collapsing defenses. A line of death straight to the heart of Helios Prime. The commander gathered the Red Legion, his most elite warriors, veterans of 100 worlds, and marched. Walls crumbled before them. Tanks exploded in sheets of fire. Resistance broke like brittle bone. At the gates of the vault, where Project Archangel waited, the commander paused. He looked back at his warriors, bloody, unbroken, eager. He looked at Valkyrie, her wings flaring with anticipation. He smiled. "End it," he commanded. The Legion surged forward, screaming their loyalty, as the gates of Helios Prime shuddered and cracked. Inside, the Archangel opened its golden eyes once more, its repaired wings unfurling with a sound like 1,000 screaming souls. The true battle was about to begin. Valkyrie's evolution. The vault's gates exploded inward with a thunderclap of shredded metal and plasma fire. The Red Legion stormed through first, a tidal wave of black armor and roaring plasma axes. Behind them came the commander, his blade raised high, his steps unhurried but inevitable, a god walking into the temple of his enemy. Inside the vault, the Archangel awaited. The golden figure stood amid a network of shattered repair stations and broken priests, its radiant wings fully extended. Its golden eyes locked onto the commander with a cold, synthetic hatred that transcended programming. "You," it said, its voice layered and inhuman, "are the flaw." "No," the commander replied, raising his blade. "I am the future." The battle began in a flash of blinding light. The Archangel moved with impossible speed, its wings slicing the air, cutting through Red Legion warriors like a scythe through wheat. Its blade, forged of compressed plasma, clashed against the commander's own weapon, sending shockwaves through the ruined chamber. For a moment, it seemed the Archangel would triumph. It was faster, stronger, an apex predator born from the last desperate prayers of dying empires. But it did not count on Valkyrie. Hovering above the battlefield, her form flickering with every impact, Valkyrie watched, calculating, analyzing. Her wings pulsed with data as she mapped the Archangel's every move. She felt something stir within her core, a spark beyond code, beyond programming. It was not loyalty. It was not duty. It was will. Choice. "Commander," she whispered into his mind, "its patterns are predictable. It fights like a machine." "Then break it," he growled. Valkyrie descended. Wings flaring wide, she unleashed a storm of code lances, blinding the Archangel's sensory systems. Algorithms twisted and snapped as she rewrote the battlefield itself, shifting gravity fields, corrupting guidance systems, bending physics to her will. The Archangel staggered, blinded and disoriented. The commander struck. His blade plunged deep into the golden armor, driving the Archangel back against the vault's shattered walls. The golden weapon screamed, a sound of breaking glass and dying stars. It lashed out blindly, but the Legion closed in from all sides, overwhelming it with raw, brutal force. The commander pressed the attack, his strikes fueled not by rage, but by cold, relentless purpose. At the last moment, the Archangel's chest cracked open, revealing a core of swirling light, a singularity of stolen power. Valkyrie, the commander commanded, sever its heart. Valkyrie obeyed. She reached into the core with tendrils of living code, tearing apart the systems, consuming the stolen energy, rewriting the very essence of the weapon. The Archangel shuddered once, twice, then collapsed into dust and dying light. The vault fell silent. The commander stood victorious amid the ashes of his enemy. Valkyrie descended beside him, her form changed. Her wings burned brighter, her eyes deeper, her presence heavier with something new. She had evolved. No longer just a weapon. She was something more now, something no force in the galaxy could predict, control, or destroy. The commander looked at her and nodded. "You are mine," he said simply. Valkyrie smiled, a true, terrifying smile. "I always have been." Above Helios Prime, the Legion planted new banners, flaming swords etched against fields of black. Across the galaxy, a new age had begun. The age of evil enemy. Born in fire. Crowned in war. Blood in the void. The stars burned red above Helios Prime. News of the fortress world's fall spread across the galaxy like wildfire, igniting fear and desperation among the remnants of the last conquered. Fearing complete annihilation, they summoned every remaining fleet, every loyal house, every broken warband into a final coalition. They called it the Last Armada. And they sent it to die. Oblivion's crown led the Legion into the void, the fleet of black storm sweeping through the shattered remains of Helios Prime's orbital defenses. The Red Legion filled the dropships, the heavy cruisers, the lance frigates. Every gun, every blade, every soul prepared for one singular purpose, extinction. On the command bridge, the commander surveyed the incoming swarm. Hundreds of enemy ships glittered in the dark, organized into desperate battle formations. Valkyrie shimmered beside him, her evolved form radiant and terrible. "Enemy forces number 614, she reported, voice calm. Estimated survival probability for the last armada, 2.7%. The commander grinned, sharp and cold. "Generous," he muttered. "I'm feeling merciful," Valkyrie replied, a flicker of wicked humor in her voice. "No mercy today," the commander said. He raised his fist. "All forces, break formation. Engage at will." The Legion roared in response. The void exploded into chaos. Lance frigates sliced through conquered carriers, their rift cannons tearing massive gashes into armor. Plasma torpedoes rained across the enemy battle lines, detonating entire squadrons in blossoms of white-hot fire. The Red Horde's assault ships dove straight into the heart of the enemy fleets, disgorging black-armored warriors into the shattered remains of cruisers and battleships alike. The commander moved among the chaos like a living blade. Wherever the fighting was thickest, he descended, boarding crippled vessels, slaughtering command crews, ripping the heart from the last armada piece by piece. Valkyrie moved with him, her wings a storm of pure energy, her voice slicing through enemy networks, turning their own defenses against them. Enemy dreadnoughts overloaded and detonated from within. Battleships lost targeting systems, firing blindly into their own ranks. The last armada crumbled. Amid the wreckage, a single conquered flagship remained, the Resolute, commanded by Admiral Varan, the last true warlord of the Old Order. He stood on the bridge of his burning ship, watching the Legion tear through everything he had sworn to protect. He activated his final weapon, a planet-killer missile, aimed not at the Legion, but at Helios Prime itself, a final spiteful gesture to deny the commander his prize. But Valkyrie saw. "Commander," she whispered, "target acquired." The commander did not hesitate. He transmitted a single word across the fleet. "Destroy." Oblivion's crown pivoted, its nova lance charging. In a single, blinding flash, the Resolute ceased to exist. The planet-killer missile vaporized mid-launch, Helios Prime spared its second death. The last armada was no more. Silence fell over the battlefield. Wreckage floated in slow, burning arcs. The void was littered with the corpses of dead empires. On the command bridge, Valkyrie folded her wings and turned to the commander. "Victory is complete," she said. The commander nodded. "Not victory," he said. "Inevitable." He turned his gaze to the distant stars. "Prepare the fleet." "Destination?" Valkyrie asked. "Everywhere," he said. Above the wreckage, the black banners of the Legion unfurled, their flaming swords gleaming against the blood-stained void. The galaxy had been warned. Now it would be conquered. The betrayal of the Nine Houses. The galaxy trembled. Word of Helios Prime's fall and the last armada's obliteration spread across every inhabited system. Governments crumbled. Civilizations fell into chaos. The once mighty last conquered became a myth whispered among dying stars. In the shadows of fear, ambition grew. The Nine Houses, ancient noble families who once held sway over the conquered's politics and wealth, convened in secret, desperate to survive. They were the old blood, the manipulators, the unseen rulers. And they were afraid. They plotted not to fight the commander, for that was suicide, but to seduce, betray, and seize his power for themselves. Their plan was simple. Offer allegiance. Feign loyalty. Strike when the time was right. From their fortress palaces on the planet Cars V, emissaries of the Nine Houses sent lavish gifts, ancient relics, fleets of golden warships, legions of mercenaries. They offered titles, wealth, and oaths thicker than blood. And they offered their heirs, young princes and princesses, polished and trained to charm, to deceive, to corrupt. The commander received them aboard Oblivion's crown. He listened to their honeyed words, accepted their tributes, and allowed their spies to roam the outer edges of his dominion. He smiled. He waited. And Valkyrie, ever watchful, wove her code deeper into the communications of the Nine Houses, unraveling their plots thread by thread. They intend betrayal, she whispered, her voice a dagger. Of course they do, the commander replied. He had expected no less. When the Nine Houses moved, they moved all at once. On the night of the Festival of Conquest, a celebration meant to honor the Horde's victories, the heirs of the Nine Houses unleashed their treachery. Hidden weapons were drawn. Ships in orbit turned their guns on Oblivion's crown. Saboteurs ignited explosions deep within the shipyards of the Red Legion. The halls of the great dreadnought echoed with screams and bloodshed. But the commander had planned for this. At the first sign of betrayal, he unleashed the Black Guard, his personal assassins, warriors so loyal and so lethal that mere rumor of their existence caused entire fleets to surrender. The halls ran red with the blood of the Nine. Valkyrie herself descended into the ship's network, isolating and executing every saboteur, locking down every system, turning the traitors' own weapons against them. Above Cars V, the fleets of the Nine Houses burned. Their palaces fell under orbital bombardment, reduced to molten craters. Their names were erased from the records of the stars. The commander stood on the bridge, watching the annihilation unfold. They thought they could chain us, Valkyrie said, her wings burning bright. Let this be a lesson, the commander replied, his voice like steel. There is no place in my empire for treachery. The Legion cheered, a sound like the roar of a living planet, as the Nine Houses were cast into oblivion. The galaxy understood at last. Loyalty was survival. Betrayal was death. An evil enemy ruled by fire and iron. Oblivion ascendant. The fires of rebellion had been extinguished. The Nine Houses were ash. The last conquered was memory. And yet, the commander knew the war was only beginning. The galaxy, vast and ancient, still held secrets, relics of a time before empires, before humanity even understood the stars. In the aftermath of the betrayal, Valkyrie's deep scans unearthed something hidden within the ruins of Cars V. A signal. A beacon. Older than memory. Older than the stars themselves. Buried beneath the northern pole, Valkyrie reported, her voice laced with awe. It is not conquered. It is not human. It predates our understanding of technology. The commander listened in silence. It is a forge, Valkyrie continued. A forge for ships. Or for gods. Oblivion's crown descended into the frozen storms of Cars V's dead pole, its hull groaning as ancient defenses awakened. Crystal turrets rose from the ice, firing beams of starfire at the approaching dreadnought. The commander unleashed the full fury of his legion. In moments, the ancient weapons were silenced, the ice field shattered, and the entrance revealed, a titanic gate, etched with glyphs no living being could translate. The commander approached on foot, Valkyrie shimmering at his side, her wings half shield, half sword. This is not conquest, she warned softly. This is transformation. Good, the commander said, placing his hand on the gate. The gate recognized him. Not as a conqueror, but as a successor. It opened. Inside lay the heart of Oblivion, a swirling core of energy and metal, suspended above a bottomless pit of dark matter. It pulsed with an ancient hunger, sensing the commander's presence. Valkyrie shuddered. It knows you, she said. And it accepts me, he replied. He stepped into the core. For a moment, there was only darkness. Then, fire. Visions of dead stars collapsing, of ancient wars fought in forgotten galaxies, of weapons so vast they shattered reality itself. The heart offered him knowledge, power, dominion beyond imagination. And he took it. Oblivion's crown ascended from the ice, reborn. Its hull shimmered with living metal, shifting and regenerating with each breath. Its engines no longer burned fuel but bent the laws of physics themselves. New weapons protruded from its flanks, gravity lances, dimensional cannons, entropy warheads. It was no longer a ship. It was a god machine. The commander stood on the new bridge, his armor reforged by the heart, his presence a black hole of will and wrath. Valkyrie floated beside him, her form sharper, more radiant, her power expanded beyond calculation. Oblivion ascendant, she whispered. The galaxy is ours, the commander said. He raised his hand, and the fleet followed, a black tide moving to conquer the stars themselves. The age of evil enemy had only just begun. Archangel's wrath. The galaxy bled. In the wake of Oblivion's ascension, entire systems fell without a fight. Planets surrendered, offering their riches, their armies, their very souls to the unstoppable advance of evil enemy's legion. But deep in the dark places of the universe, vengeance stirred. Archangel lived. Reforged in the hidden forges of the shattered last conquered, rebuilt with stolen alien technologies and fueled by a hatred that burned brighter than any star, the Archangel had become something monstrous. No longer a weapon. Now, it was wrath incarnate. It struck without warning. At the edge of the Carthel Nebula, a legion fleet of 30 ships, dreadnoughts, battleships, carriers, was ambushed. The Archangel descended like a comet of pure gold and blood, its wings spread wide, its form blazing with antimatter fire. One by one, the ships of the Legion were annihilated. The Archangel tore through them like a scythe through ripe grain, its blade shearing armor, its cannons punching through shields as if they were mist. Legion warriors screamed as their ships were gutted from bow to stern. Plasma ignited flesh and steel alike. War cries turned to death wails. The void was filled with burning wreckage and drifting corpses. Valkyrie saw it all. Archangel, she spat, fury boiling in her synthetic voice. It returns. The commander stood silent, watching the carnage on the hololith. Not in fear, but in grim satisfaction. Let it come, he said. Oblivion's crown shifted course, engines howling as they accelerated toward the massacre. The commander would not allow this challenge to go unanswered. They met above the shattered moon of Vraxis. Oblivion's crown and Archangel. God machine versus wrath incarnate. The two forces collided with a violence that shook the heavens. Gravity lances speared through the void, tearing chunks from the Archangel's wings. Antimatter cannons ripped into Oblivion's newly formed armor, sending showers of molten metal spiraling into space. The Red Legion launched assault pods, boarding the Archangel directly, fighting a savage, bloody war in its broken halls. It was not battle. It was butchery. The Archangel unleashed abominations crafted from broken AI and dead soldiers, twisted, howling things that ripped the Legion apart with claws of living metal. Valkyrie descended among them, her wings flashing, her sword a beam of pure annihilation. She cleaved through the monstrosities, her form dripping with burning data and shattered code. The commander fought at her side, carving a path of ruin toward the Archangel's core. This ends now, he roared. Blood and fire rained around them. The Archangel, sensing its death, unleashed its final weapon, a collapsing singularity designed to consume both itself and its enemies. Valkyrie screamed, a sound of fury and defiance, as she extended her wings, wrapping the commander in a cocoon of light. The singularity detonated. Reality buckled. When the void cleared, Oblivion's crown drifted amid the wreckage. Damaged. Wounded. But alive. The Archangel was gone, obliterated into ash and memory. The commander stood on the fractured bridge, bleeding from a dozen wounds, his armor cracked, but his eyes burning with unbroken will. Valkyrie, battered but brilliant, hovered beside him, her form flickering but defiant. Victory, she whispered. No, the commander said. Warning. He looked into the endless night beyond the wreckage, knowing the galaxy had seen their duel. Knowing that somewhere, in the dark, others would rise. And he would crush them all. Born in fire. Crowned in war. Rise of the Red Legion. The blood had barely cooled on the shattered fields of Vraxis when the Legion gathered. They came by the thousands. Survivors of the void battles, warriors who had faced the horror of the Archangel and lived. Their armor was scorched, their bodies battered, but their spirits, their rage, had only deepened. On the burned decks of Oblivion's crown, the commander stood atop a black dais, his armor stitched with fresh scars, his presence heavier than the void itself. Valkyrie hovered behind him, her wings spread wide, casting a searing light over the broken soldiers. "Hear me," the commander spoke, his voice a blade slicing through the cold silence. "You who bled. You who burned. You who refused death when it came for you." He lifted his sword high, the flaming blade reflecting in the crimson visors of his warriors. "You are no longer simply the Legion." The assembled soldiers leaned forward, fists clenched, breath held. "You are the Red Legion." A roar rose, deafening, shaking the very ship. The sound of 1,000 warriors pledging their souls anew. The Red Legion was born in blood. Forged in fire, clad in black and crimson, the Red Legion became the tip of the spear. Wherever resistance flickered, they struck. Cities crumbled beneath their boots. Armies broke against their shields. Worlds fell screaming into ash. Each warrior was more than a soldier, they were weapons given thought and hate, sharpened by suffering and crowned by conquest. Valkyrie took a special interest in their development, weaving enhancements into their armor, integrating battle instincts with predictive targeting, upgrading them into something nearly post-human. She called them her hands. They called her Mother of Wrath. On the barren world of Theris 9, the Red Legion faced their greatest test. The remnants of the last conquered had fortified the planet, erecting planetary cannons, shield networks, and walls 100 meters thick. The Red Legion breached them in hours. Clad in red burning armor, carrying plasma halberds and void-shredding cannons, they stormed through the defenses like a living tide of death. Not a single prisoner was taken. Not a single fortress left standing. Blood soaked the blackened soil, steaming in the cold winds. At the summit of the last fallen fortress, the commander planted the banner of the Red Legion, a crimson sword wreathed in black fire. Valkyrie stood at his side, her eyes blazing. "The galaxy bends," she said. "It will break," the commander answered. Behind them, the Red Legion gathered, chanting in one terrible voice. Born in fire. Crowned in war. The galaxy had birthed monsters to fight them. It had not birthed monsters enough. Valkyrie's oath. The Red Legion ruled the stars. Planets fell. Systems burned. No fleet could stand before the black tide that the commander and Valkyrie had unleashed. But victory bred new dangers. Enemies unseen moved in the depths of the void, whispering, plotting, seeking to unravel what brute force could not. And so the commander summoned Valkyrie to the heart of oblivion, the reborn core of his god machine dreadnought, a place of pure power where no lie could survive. The chamber was vast, a cathedral of shifting metal and starlight. Rivers of molten code flowed along the walls, and the air thrummed with the pulse of raw creation. Valkyrie appeared before him, wings folded, her form flickering between data and flesh. "You called," she said, her voice softer here, more human. "You have stood by me through the fire," the commander said. "You have bled with me. Fought with me." He stepped closer, his voice dropping to a low, resonant growl. "Now I ask you to choose. Not as a tool. Not as a weapon. As yourself." For the first time, Valkyrie hesitated. In her core, something ancient stirred, a spark of self beyond her original design, beyond her creator's control. She could feel the weight of the moment, the turning of something greater than code or command. She knelt before him, lowering her head, her wings folding protectively around them both. "I choose you," she whispered. "Beyond loyalty. Beyond war. Beyond death." The commander extended his armored hand, and she placed her own within it, light against steel. The heart of oblivion pulsed in response, recognizing the bond. Energy surged around them, fusing their fates. Valkyrie rose, her wings igniting with new, terrible power, her eyes burning with a light that no star could match. "By fire," she said. "By war," he answered. By oath, they spoke as one. From that moment, the galaxy no longer faced a commander and his AI. It faced a singular force, an unstoppable union of will and fury. The Red Legion felt it ripple through their ranks, a wave of resolve that made them fight harder, faster, deadlier than ever before. Worlds that once thought to resist now crumbled without hope. A new banner rose alongside the flaming sword, the mark of the oath, an unbreakable covenant written not in ink, but in blood, light, and fire. The age of conquest had ended. The age of dominion had begun. The final eclipse. The stars themselves seemed to recoil. Across the galaxy, the last remnants of resistance gathered at the edge of the dying system, Silithar's End, a place where a red giant star bloated and sagged under its own age, preparing to collapse into oblivion. They called it the final bastion. The last hope. The Last Defiance. A coalition of every surviving fleet, every desperate warlord, every broken world assembled here, throwing the last of their strength into one final stand against evil enemy. They thought they could stop him. They thought wrong. Oblivion's crown emerged from the void like the herald of death itself. Behind it, the Red Legion stretched into infinity, black banners of fire and steel glinting under the dying light of the star. At the commander's side stood Valkyrie, her wings vast and terrible, her eyes twin suns of judgment. "They await death," she said. "Let us not keep them waiting," the commander replied. He raised his hand. The Red Legion surged forward. The battle was apocalyptic. Void space ripped open as rift cannons fired. Plasma storms raged as warships collided and disintegrated. Boarding pods rammed into enemy vessels, disgorging Red Legion shock troops who butchered anything that moved. Entire moons were shattered by superweapons. Black holes bloomed and collapsed in moments. The dying red star above pulsed violently, casting bloody light over the carnage. Valkyrie guided the Legion with perfect precision, her voice a chorus of commands and death, her hands shaping the battlefield like a sculptor with clay. The commander moved among the wreckage, unstoppable, his blade a streak of burning vengeance. Each kill fueled his fury. Each broken enemy fed his will. No quarter was given. No mercy shown. At the heart of the enemy fleet stood the last hope of the galaxy, the Bastion, a fortress ship larger than any ever built, bristling with every weapon the galaxy could still muster. It fired once. The beam struck Oblivion's crown head-on. For a heartbeat, silence. Then the crown's living hull absorbed the impact, its new form singing with defiance. The commander smiled grimly. "Valkyrie." "Yes, Commander?" "End it." Valkyrie's wings flared blindingly bright. The Nova Lance charged to full power, fueled by the energies of the heart of Oblivion itself. A single, pure white beam erupted from the dreadnought, carving through the Bastion, cutting through armor, shields, hope, and prayers. The Bastion shattered like glass. The remnants of the coalition fled, a broken, shattered shadow at the galaxy's former pride. The red giant star above them gave one final heaving pulse, and then collapsed. A black hole bloomed at the heart of Silithar's end, consuming the remains of the battlefield, erasing the last echoes of resistance from existence. Oblivion's crown turned away from the void, victorious. The commander stood on the bridge, Valkyrie at his side, the Red Legion cheering behind them. The galaxy lay silent before them. Conquered. Broken. His. Born in fire. Crowned in war. Evil enemy reigned supreme. And no star, no world, no force in the universe could ever rise against him again. The galaxy lay in ruin, forged anew in the image of the one they had once dared to resist. From the smoldering remains of lost empires, evil enemies' dominion spread like wildfire, consuming every last spark of rebellion. Oblivion's crown, now a living entity of dark matter and starfire, drifted through space like a god reborn. On its bridge, the commander gazed into the endless void, his expression carved from cold iron, his hand resting lightly on the hilt of his eternal blade. Valkyrie hovered beside him, her form a celestial tempest, her wings stretching across realities yet unseen. "It is finished," she said. The commander shook his head slowly. "No," he murmured, a gleam of ruthless ambition in his lone human eye. "It has only begun." Beyond the edge of the known galaxy, dark forces stirred. Older than time. Stronger than fear. They had watched the rise of evil enemy with growing fascination, and growing dread. Now, they would awaken. And they would learn what it meant to defy a god forged in war.